Welcome to Archery Talk 101 podcast, your guide to better archery skills. We'll bring you the latest tips, tricks, and expert advice, but that's not all. We'll also have interviews with top archers and industry professionals and reviews of the latest gear and equipment and much more. Hi, my name is Rory Canterbury. I'm your host today on Archery Talk 101, and we have a special guest with us today. Christian is on the line with us. How you doing today, Christian?
Doing good, Roy. How are you?
Doing great. Gonna have another fun day of talking archery.
Sounds like a plan.
Well, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little something about yourself?
Sure, not a problem. My name is Christian Moore. I live in the Tidal River region of Virginia, just off the Chesapeake. Moved here from North Carolina about 5 years to pursue my goals and aspirations of becoming a charter captain. That's currently what I do. I own and operate Real Country Guide Service here in Virginia. We target big trophy blue catfish on primarily the James River and the Rappahannock River.
Yeah, the blue catfish are fun to catch.
They are a lot of fun. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, I think I could have a whole podcast just on fishing, because I have a lot of friends that fish and I fish. But we're here today to talk about archery, at least to start with anyway.
Oh,
so,
for sure. Yep.
How and why did you get started in archery?
Really the biggest reason I picked up archery is I was looking for something more challenging. Growing up as a young fella hunting, my dad was a big into gun hunting, done really well at it, which there's nothing wrong with that. But I got to a certain point where I was, looking for something a little more challenging. And I guess it struck my interest seeing the guys who were in archery being able to get out in the woods early season and get an opportunity to get at those bucks when they're, still roaming in their bachelor packs early in the season, and just something different, more challenging, I guess.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of it is more challenging. It takes more work, but you do get a lot closer to the game. I had one guy that was asked to, he bow hunted. He's, going for, all the big games in United States. And he asked one time, I said, what's the difference between a bow hunter and a gun hunter? And he said, the time you spend hunting. Because, going on a hunt, you're gonna spend the same amount of time preparing for the hunt, whether it's gun or bow. You're going to spend the, same amount of time getting there, getting set up to go hunt. And then after you kill the animal, you're going to spend the same amount of time doing it. So what's different? On a rifle, you could go out the first day and you see one, 200 yards away, 300 yards away, and you shoot, your hunt's done. With a bow, we're just getting started. Now I for how to get closer than bow range, and 200 yards is not bow range.
Oh, absolutely not. That's, when I mentioned the word, challenging, it's, to me, it was about the hunting itself. You really had to learn how to pattern these animals. Whatever the wind was doing that day, you had to be very mindful of that. If you're rifle hunting on a big cutover or something, or a field, you don't have to be as sensitive towards what the wind and the weather's doing. But archery, I mean, you got to be like a ninja out there to get good shots on these animals. And that added level of difficulty is, for me at least, was one of the things that drew me to it the most.
So what's been your most challenging hunt with your bow?
Most challenging hunt. I'll tell you, I had been, this is probably my third or fourth year toting a bow in the woods. And I had a really, really good animal. Been seeing him on camera for the past couple years. I would see him early season, and then, when gun would come in, he, all the people getting in the woods, you wouldn't see him that much anymore. So the first year I saw him, didn't get an opportunity to draw down on him. And then for the next 2 seasons, I thought it was gone. I thought somebody had killed the deer. And then that 4th season, I saw the buck. He was a real nice, he's probably 160, 165 class animal. and I saw him crossing one of my shooting lanes, and he was right at the outskirts of where I feel comfortable of cutting the arrow loose. He was right around 45 yards, and I got so excited. I forgot I was at the time I was shooting a 1-pin sight optimizer, HHA optimizer, and I got buck fever so bad I forgot to turn that pin up and turn the dial, and shot right up under him. That was very difficult to stomach, for sure, from a difficulty, but probably physical difficulty, probably stalking. I've killed one deer stalking him with a bow. I think that's probably the most challenging thing, is stalking an animal in the wild and getting a kill.
Yeah, that is, because you make one wrong move and one move in the wrong time, and they
Yeah.
catch you and they're gone. And it can be challenging. And cornfields are an interesting way to hunt. You go through them, you kind of stick your head through and look both ways, and then kind of stick through. And the wind's
Yeah,
the
for
best time
me,
to
it
do it
was
because it makes so much noise.
it was so much like, another thing I liked about it. It was so much pregame. You get in the woods, you set your stand up or your ground blind or wherever you're hunting, and I would spend hours in the woods before the season would even come in, picking shooting lanes, trying to hypothesize where they were going to be, where they were going to move. I would have different things and different trees in the woods. I would range them and kind of add to memory what ranges those marks were at, to kind of help me, because a lot of times when a deer walks in on you, you don't have time to be able to make the movement to bring that rangefinder up, because you don't want to get busted.
Right.
So anytime you can preemptively plan and know all your yardages around you, that definitely helps.
Yeah, that helps. And like you said, you had a 1-pin and you forgot to set it. Well, that's the
Yeah,
disadvantage of a single pin.
absolutely. And I used to shoot a more traditional multi-pin shot. I think you and I had talked about this the other day when you reached out to me, because I ended up having to shoot a clarifier with my prescription glasses. Over the course of a few years, as I kept shooting, I started to get really bad pin blur on the multi-pin sights, because
Right.
my prescription kept changing and changing as my eyes were growing older. And eventually it got to the point where I had to go to a 1-pin, because I was having trouble deciphering the multi-pin shooting sights.
Yeah, and therein is the advantage of a single pin. You only got 1 pin. So if you
Right.
set it, you don't have to figure out, okay, which pin do I use? It's already decided for you. And it can be either way. I still use multiple pins, just because that's what I'm used to, and I still use multiple pins. But in my hunting bow, as well as my a bow I use for a target and everything else.
Sure. Yeah, if it works, but like, I would still shoot a multi-pin sight. I really was not happy having to go to a 1-pin, but it did help me see better.
And that's the whole thing, whatever we need to do, if it gets down where we have to go to a crossbow to still stay in the field, hey, go with crossbow. It's still archery.
Yep, for sure.
Kind of like I said, just about every episode, archery is a stick with a string flinging another stick. If it fits in that category, then it's archery. So,
Yeah, because as you grow older, you don't have the strength, or your joints start getting bad. When I was a young fella, I used to have a different mindset, especially with some of the older guys shooting crossbows and stuff. Now that I'm over 40, I get it. I
yeah.
understand.
Well, and for a long time in Nebraska, a crossbow fit under the firearm season. You couldn't use it during archery unless you were physically unable to draw and hold back a traditional type of bow, whether it be longbow, compound bow, or recurve. If you couldn't do that, then you could use a crossbow. But they've changed that now, so they consider a crossbow during the archery season, so it's open for anybody. And nice on that is somebody that is going from firearm to archery can pick up the crossbow and be right in there really good because you shoot it basically the same way. You
That's
bring it
right.
up, you put the scope on it and you squeeze the trigger. You start getting into compounds and now you shoot them differently. You're
Yeah.
holding them differently, you're shooting them differently, and recurves and longbows, you're still, holding fairly the same, but you're releasing differently because normally using fingers.
Right.
So they just all shoot a little differently, and that's. And the other reason, I like crossbows is, for the younger kids, they don't have the strength, maybe they can only shoot 30, 35 pounds. And nice about the crossbow is now it doesn't matter because you can put cranks on them to cock them. So as long as you're strong enough to turn the crank, you can cock a crossbow.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. That's a good point that you brought that up, Roy, because one of my biggest passions is seeing our youth get into outdoors, and that does allow the young boys and girls to archery hunt within season as a crossbow. That's a very good point.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, and you don't have to have a lot of draw weight to kill a deer. Now if you get the lighter weights, you want to stay with a fixed blade, to be slower, and
Yeah.
you do sacrifice some of your kinetic energy with the mechanical. Even the really good ones, you're going to sacrifice some energy just to open the blades up. So the lighter pounded bows, if you're shooting 30, 40, maybe even 50 pounds, you really should be shooting a fixed blade. And
Sure.
and there's a lot of different ones out there, and I like the tough ones. I shoot a Muzzy. I've been shooting Muzzy for several decades. That was the first broadhead I bought to put on my bow. The shop owner, that's what she recommended, and I've been shooting it ever since. I haven't shot anything else. I do have a set of Montac mechanicals when I didn't have time to set up my bow and I was going to get out and I was going to use my target bow, and now I have to worry about setting it up, but I didn't get out for that either. So that's all I shoot is Muzzies, and you can get them where they fly consistently. They never fly like their field tips. No matter what you say, they're not going to fly the same. Don't even try. I have two different bows, so I have one bow set up for hunting, and the sight set up to shoot the broadheads. They all group the same, so I can, I set them up, where I'm shooting the X rings in them. I can hit those with my broadheads like I can with the field tips, but not with the same bow, or the same sight. So my option is to either get one with a dovetail on it and change sights, or unbolt it, bolt up the other sight. If I only have one bow, buy two sights, set one up for broadheads and one up for your field tip, and you just switch them back and forth. Now I have a couple bows, so I have one set up for shooting field tips, one set up for shooting broadheads, and you don't need the latest and greatest bow. My hunting bow's a 2001 PSE Carrera. I've had since 2001.
Okay.
When I was a PSE dealer, and then a couple of years later they come out with the Scorpion. And that's my other bow. PSE is what I shoot.
Yeah, I had two different hunting arrows. It just depended on what block of woods or what area I was hunting on that particular day. I prefer a fixed blade broadhead. I shot the Montec G5 for years. And if I was hunting, close range stuff up to 30 yards, 30, 35 yards, I preferred using that. But then on the other side of the coin, if I was hunting an area that I knew I may potentially, have a shot that was 40, 45, 50 yards potentially, I kind of more lean towards the mechanical side of things because I had more confidence in them just from their trajectory and flight path. It was a little bit more repeatable practicing with them.
Right. Yeah, because you have to go through and your broadheads, you have to tune them so they fly, and you can do some tuning with them. On mine, by loosening and tightening the broadhead part on it, you can steer it a little bit. What I do is I have something called a U-bar. It's a cone-shaped washer and a rubber O-ring. And depending on how tight I tighten it down, I can adjust it. And that's how I tune my arrows to shoot them all in the same spot. Now they never fly like the field tips.
Sure, right.
They're off at 20 yards. They're off probably inch or two.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't care if I shoot my hunting bow with the field arrows. I don't care that they're not hitting in the center. I care that they're still grouping.
Right. Yeah. Right. That's all we're ever looking for.
Are they grouping? Because I know my broadheads will hit where I'm wanting to go, but the field tips aren't. And then if I'm going to do like 3Ds, I grab the other bow, because it's set up to shoot field tips, and I don't like shooting off, but just to practice with the hunting bow, I'm just going through the motions of, getting familiar with the bow, because I do shoot slightly different. Because there are different bows.
Yeah.
Now, the one thing I've seen is as the bows are getting shorter and faster, the fixed blades are getting harder and harder to control. Because
makes sense.
One of the things that we've talked this on a couple other podcasts, as the bows get faster and faster and shorter, they get harder and harder to control. So they are going to magnify any mistakes you have.
Yep.
And
or less forgiving. That's a good point.
And then the fixed blades, because they're so much faster, now that fixed blade up front, now you get the wings up front and wing back. And as you get them faster, then they're just harder to get them in sync. For a slower arrow, it's going to be, less sensitive to that speed. So a lot of different aspects you can go through and tuning them up. So what's been your most memorable hunt?
Oh, without a doubt, man. I shot a 8-pointer opening day, still in velvet. I had always wanted to take a deer in velvet, and it was actually the first deer I ever got mounted that I killed with a bow. I've always got in my stand super early. For whatever reason, people have always said, you're crazy for going in there at late, but I'll sit in a tree hour and a half, 2 hours before the sun starts to come up. I had some pretty good pictures of this animal. Had him patterned pretty good. But he didn't come through at the time that I had been seeing him on camera. He was a little late that morning, and I was hunting the edge of a cornfield on my father's property. This was in Rockham, North Carolina, and it was probably almost 3 hours after daylight. I had seen a few does come in, and I'm like, where are all these good bucks that I've been seeing on camera? And then off in the distance, about 100 yards, I could see one coming out of the cornfield, and it was an 8-pointer too, not quite as big as this one, but I was patient, and sure enough, it was a bachelor pack of them roaming, and the one I had been wanting, he came in, and Roy, when I tell you, right when I drew down on this deer, he turns and he goes from a broadside position. He doesn't see me, he doesn't bust me, but he just turns. And I don't know if he may have heard me draw, but he didn't look up in my direction. He just changed his body posture, and he was pretty much in line with me. And I had already drawn down, and I was fixing to release, because I'd been holding for probably 30, 45 seconds. But then he looked up in my direction, and I'm like, great. So here I am, arms starting to get weak. And he drops his head, starts feeding again. And I let back down off the bow, and a couple minutes pass by. But he never turns back and gets broadside. And he had kind of quartered a little bit to where I could see, and I took a gamble. I drew back down on him, and I took a not so smart shot, but hit him directly in the chest. It hit his heart perfectly and dropped him, but it was pretty hairy there for a while.
Yeah, that you draw back and they're looking at you. You can't do anything. You can't let down. You can't release because they're not in position.
Right. Yeah. There's so many boxes that you have to check. And at that point I was fairly inexperienced. And, you know, looking back on that, I probably now would not take a shot like that. But the odds were in my favor that day. But, you know, going back to what I was saying, you know, you got to check all these boxes before you let an arrow fly. And it's got to be a good shot with a bow and arrow to make sure that you don't have to do a whole pile of tracking.
Yeah, and sometimes you're gonna, no matter how good the shot is, sometimes you still got to track them for quite a ways.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely.
Yeah, it's, you know, like earlier, you know, you don't need a lot of weight. It's all shot placement. You know, if you can get in there and miss all the ribs, you know, it's, you don't need much weight to go through. But if you start and go through some of the shoulders and, you know, then you have a little bit more problem. You know,
Yeah,
with them.
as I become to familiarize myself with the anatomy of the deer, I really did try to get a good heart shot whenever I could. You know, because it's one, you're not going to have to track them as far. And you know, I try not to use the word humane when you're talking about killing an animal, but
Yeah.
if you shoot a deer in the heart with a good place shot, it's going to be a quick process. They're not going to go
Right.
for, they're going to expire quickly.
And you know, like that's just, you said, we don't want to make a bad shot for one. You know, they're going to suffer longer than they need to.
That's right.
You know, and the way the archery kills is that they bleed out. You know, that's just what they do. And you know, if you make a really bad shot, then you know, get it, you know, gut shots, you know, those are the worst ones because they may or may not die, you know, even that day or that week. You know, so you know, we kind of avoid those if at all possible, but you know, we've all made bad shots.
Oh, it happens very frequently. I mean, I don't know how many deer I've caped out and found pieces of broadheads, arrows, all sorts of things in them that had been in there. Maybe not even from that season, but maybe you know, last year, the year before that, or the year before that. I mean, it happens a lot for sure.
Yeah, I had one that there was one of the fixed blade ones that have the blades that are just barely held in or something, and you put them in and they just kind of a little knob at the back and pin a top and screw the tip on. I found one of those in the backstrap when I was cutting off on one buck that I shot, and then one year I was out hunting. This guy told me that, you know, he shot a deer and just skimmed its back, you know, just barely skimmed the back. A little bit later that season, I shot that same doe. It's like, what's this? Oh, that's because that's right where he said he cut it. Just sliced you right at the top of the back and missed everything vital. Just cut the hide and that was the one I shot later. And you know,
Yeah, I killed one time. It was a doe, and it had the arrow had, or the broadhead had went right kind of in that back strap area, and it had about an inch and a half of the actual arrow sticking out of its body, and there's no telling how long it had been there because you know, everything had grown and fused around it.
yeah,
It's crazy how tough those animals are, man.
yeah, they are pretty tough.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're a pretty tough animal, and you know, they're good to eat.
yeah. What's
Exciting
your
to hunt.
what's your most memorable hunt, Roy?
Well, I would say it's probably the one. I had my son with me, and we had this deer was coming in, and I stood back there and watched him stalk up on this deer, and he didn't get it because he didn't know when it's behind a tree draw, but I watched him stalk up on this deer, and that was kind of cool. We did that, and another
Yeah,
time I was out with him, and it had been raining, and it was supposed to quit raining. Did quit raining. So finally we decided, you know, we're gonna go. So I got my son with me. The other guy I hunted with was there. We're starting to walk out. We're going down, and here we seen this deer. So I
sure.
stopped and I told my son, it's like, okay, stand behind me because he's looking at me. He's not looking at you. And just get ready. And you know, then but it did spook off before we got a chance to for him to take a shot at it, because I was gonna say, okay, you know, just slowly step out and you know, take a shot, but didn't quite get the time. But you know, those kind of things that you remember pretty well. And
Yeah, that's cool. You get to enjoy it with your children for sure.
yeah, I had a few of those like that. I had my one youngest son with me, and I put a tree stand next to me and had him all camoed all up, and I gave him the deer call. And this is you call. You can't do it wrong, because I says,
Yeah.
you know, if they're coming in, they're coming the way you want them. Just be quiet. And you know, there's three things going to happen if you do a call. They're either going to hear it or not hear it. They're going to come to it or run away.
That's right.
You know, if they hear it, they're either come to you, run away, or, you know, ignore it. So that's all they're going to do. And it doesn't matter what you're doing with it. There was one time I had a grunt call, and I heard what sounded like, you know, when duck hunters get bored, you know, kind of goofing around with the call. You know, I've done that. And I heard this sound of So I just figured it was a duck hunter. Next thing I know, here comes these two does walking in, and the one doe was doing it. So that's when in Nebraska we only had 2 tags all we could get. And I already shot a doe, so now I hunt bucks until, you know, December time frame, and then I'll shoot whatever to fill the tag. So it was time I was only hunting bucks right then, because I'd already had, you know, one down. And so I went on a call, and I went, you know, and I just kind of, I don't know, I really goofy sounding call. And the one doe that wasn't doing the bleating come running straight to my stand. I'm looking at her through my tree stand, and she's standing down underneath my tree stand, looking around for this buck. And I could hear the other doe just kind of bleating as it's walking off, and then just walked off. I swear she had to have hit my pole rope.
Well, you know, I got a favorite saying I like to always say, and this can be in the woods or out on the water. You know, you're wanting to catch a big fish or harvest a good buck or something. You got to look at it like this: it's either going to happen or it's not. The key is just to keep going and stay going, and it eventually will happen. Just don't get discouraged. Just stay positive and keep at it, and eventually something good will come your way.
Yeah, you just got to keep going out and doing it, and that's, you know, that's what counts, the fun part in there. I remember one time I was out, and I got my bow sitting there, because I like to be at my tree stand an hour before shooting time.
Yeah.
You know, so you got sunrise, half hour before sunrise, we can shoot. So I like to be there an hour before. One, if I make any noise, spook anything up, I can get there, I can get down and relax, and, you know, kind of cool off from the walk in. And this one morning, I'm sitting, I got my bow hanging up on the hanger, because I hang it up until it's about time to shoot anyway. And I'm watching the sun start coming up, and I start seeing the frost form on all the trees. And I'm watching it form on my bow, because it's sitting out there. Frost is forming on all the trees. And then later that morning, and, you know, mid morning, when I went back home, along the road going back, there's a whole bunch of row of evergreen trees, and they're all covered with frost. It's like,
don't you love? I love stuff like that, Roy. It's, you know, it's not only about the, you know, the kill or the hunt. It's just getting out there and experiencing nature and getting to see stuff that probably 90% of the population don't even know you can see or experience.
Yeah. And you're sitting in your tree stand all camoed up, and a bird comes land, you know, within, you can kick it. It's so close.
A bird or a squirrel,
yeah.
or a black bear cub. I had a black bear cub come up the tree one time.
Oh,
in a climbing stand, and he come all the way up to the base of the stand and stops. You know, he's doing that, you know, kind of like a dog does, looking at me.
Yeah.
And he goes to put his paw up on the base of the stand, and all the while I'm sitting there thinking, this is the cub, where's the mom at?
Right.
And he goes to try to continue climbing up the tree, and I put my foot in front of his head, and so he just shuffles around to the other side and starts trying to come up. And then, you know, in a stern voice, I'm like, no. And then he goes back around to the other side, and then I have to put my boot on his forehead and say no, and push him down. And he eventually, he wasn't scared at all. He had this curious personality about him. Like, he was not afraid one bit about me. He was just trying to figure out what was going on and what was up in that tree. But he eventually crawled back down and wandered off. But I never did. And it was a young bear. You know, definitely should have been with his mother, but never saw her. Thank goodness.
Yeah. Yeah, That's the kind of stories it's all, the interesting, the things you remember. And, of course, we all like to go out there and kill a deer because we got the meat when we get to go home. But, so there's other memories that is always nice to do. And, you've got these tracking things, you're tracking a deer, and, those are all stories in themselves. But,
Mm-hmm.
there's always interesting things that happen out there. I've had friends of mine tell me that birds have actually landed on them.
Yep. Yeah.
Because you look like a tree. You're sitting there, they just land on you. They don't know. Squirrels,
Yep.
they can't figure, if you're in camo, the squirrels can't figure what you are.
I've had them crawl right by me, right over me. Yep.
Yeah, I've had it a couple times. I had a squirrel. It was one place, it was not much going on, and this squirrel come out, and I'm sitting in the tree stand, and I'm not sure if season's open yet because I have my hunting tag, so I can, I can shoot him if I wanted to. So I reach in my pocket, pull out my wallet, open it up, pull the card out, says, squirrel season's open. Put it back and put it in my pocket. All this time the squirrel's looking at me while I'm doing all this. So then I draw back on it, it's still looking at me. And so then I shoot the squirrel, and I don't shoot up in the tree because I don't want to lose the arrows, but this is down on the ground. It just went right through, and he just sit there and watch me the whole time. Couldn't figure me out.
Guilty as charged. I've done that before as well.
It
was definitely in season.
I was walking out, and this squirrel was on top of a fence post, and there's tall grass on the other side of the fence. And he's just looking at me. I'm walking by, and I'm actually waving my arms. He's just looking at us. I'm not going to shoot because I'm not losing an arrow in a grass field that tall, for a squirrel.
Right.
It's bad enough I just sharpen the blades on the broadhead, but
now that old 2001 bow that you're shooting, what kind of arrows do you shoot out of that bow?
I shoot a PSC carbon arrow.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got what they call their comp pros with their 1000 straightness one, because that's pretty much all I shoot.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked this in other podcasts, but the straighter the arrow, the tighter the groups.
Yeah.
The tighter the groups, the more accuracy you're going to have, and the longer range you can shoot because you have a more accurate arrow.
That's correct. What spine is it?
Well, PSC, they go 2, 3, and 4. The higher number is the stiffer spine, where a lot of them go different. They go the reverse direction, so it's the amount of deflection. PSCs go differently, and they're a 300 spine, which is what I need for a 70-pound arrow.
Yeah,
or 70-pound bow.
Yeah,
not an arrow. The arrow will weigh 70 pounds.
I know what you meant. I know what you meant.
Yeah, the arrows for my target, they weigh about 370 some grains.
Your target arrow is 370. Okay.
Yeah, and my hunting one's a little bit heavier because I tried PSC come out what they call the Hunter Shaft, which is a 7,000 straightness arrow. So I got some of those in to try them out and see what they were like, and so I've got my broadheads on and I'm tuning them up. And what happened, they set 400 spine, which is heavier than a 300 spine. And so I got them all set up. I got my bow set up. I could keep them in the X, with that low tolerance, but I'd keep them in the white on the 5 spot. So at the range I shoot, 20 yards or less is where I shoot. So it really didn't make as much of a difference there. Well, when I got ready to replace them, that's when I discovered they were heavier. So now I had to put weight tubes in my hunting arrows to bring the weight up the same, because I didn't want to readjust all my pins.
You said weight tubes? You talking about a heavier insert?
Right. You take inside the shafts, there's a plastic tube that weighs, like 1 grain an inch, 2 grains an inch, whatever. There's different ones. So I was taking it, and you take the knockout, and then you put in the tubes, and then you can bring your weight up.
Oh, I wasn't familiar with that. I knew you could change weights by changing knocks and inserts and stuff, but I didn't know you could change stuff inside the arrow.
Right. Now, if you have to, like some of the African hunts, you have like a 700 grain arrow or something really heavy, and I've talked to other people where they'll fill them with sand, to get the weight. The heavier arrow does not stop when it hits something. The lighter arrows will. And I like to equate it to, okay, you have a brick wall, you have a semi, and you have a Volkswagen. both traveling at 70 mile an hour. Which one goes through the brick wall?
Yeah, but they're not gonna get that 700 grain arrow to go as fast as that Volkswagen.
No.
I don't know what they, what are they, 700 grains? That's
Yeah,
heavy.
that's I heard somebody saying, go 700 grain arrow. A lot of them like the 400, 450 for hunting arrows just for that reason. They're a
That's
little
where
bit
I'm
slower.
at. I think my hunting arrow is about 430, 435.
Yeah, and that's where mine ended up being because of the heavier spined shaft and heavier weight. So those are set up that way. But my other ones are, I shoot 70 pounds and 370 grain arrow and at 29-inch draw length. And,
Okay.
So I'm kind of pushing there on limit because it's supposed to be 350 grains at 70 pounds. And mine's just barely over that is where you really should be. And, my hunting one's a little bit heavier, but, I don't care. That's how they shoot good. And that's all I cared about.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but it 350 grain area, that's what they IBO the bows at.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what, when they give you the rated speed of a bow, it's 70 pounds, one knock point, 350 grain arrow, 30-inch draw length. So they shoot them at that is the standard for doing the speed. So if they say it's an IBO speed of 320 feet per second, which actually my hunting bow, that's what it was rated at back in 2001. So that is the speed, the max speed that bow is going to put out. Now, if you're not shooting 70 pounds, you're not going to get it. If you're not shooting a 350 grain arrow, most people are shooting heavier because most arrows are going to come in a little heavier than that. You're not going to get the speed. If you have anything on there besides a knock point, you're not going to get that speed. So most people put a peep on there. That's going to slow it down. If you put any string dampening on it, that's going to slow it down. You put a loop on it, that's going to slow it down because the loop's going to weigh more than the knot point. On mine, if you get a chance to see my setup, I have the Sims, the string dampeners, the string leeches. I put one on both ends of my string. I also put them on my control cable and my Y cable. So I have them all over the place. Because if you take the string and then you kind of pull back on it and pluck it, it's going to ring. You put a dampener in it and you have a thud. So I'm taking all those high pitch rings and dampening them all down. Now it's going to slow down my bow. It's rated at 320. I think last time I looked at it, it was like 260, 270, right in that range. I haven't chronoed it in quite a while, but
everything is a give and take. It doesn't matter how loud it is if you're taking a 15-yard shot, but if you're shooting a little bit further, they'll hear it and jump.
Yeah.
In that millisecond that they have to move.
Well, and that quiets it down, also reduces the vibration. The older bows, they had a lot of forward motion, so you had to have a sling on them because they wouldn't sit in your hand. You didn't have a sling because proper way to shoot is don't grip your bow. Let it do what it wants to do because it'll do the same thing every time. As soon as you start gripping it, you're going to change the way it shoots. I've seen people. I've seen people have a bow that'll shoot perfect paper holes with the arrow, but they can't do it because they got a death grip on it, and they're making the bow do weird stuff. Because I've done that too. Where somebody's shooting get terrible too, and I shoot. It's like, there's nothing wrong with it. It's the shooter. A lot of things that solved by the shooter, because you can take a bow that is completely out of tune and shoot out a shooting machine. It'll put the same arrow in the same hole every time. It may do goofy stuff on the way. A good tune, well-tuned bow is going to shoot even better. It's not going to take and magnify your mistakes as much because it's shooting good. So now you just have a whole lot of stuff going on that you can fix. And I've been an archery instructor since '95, and I've taught hundreds of people how to shoot. That's always fun when you can do that. Or one time when I was at Cabela's, I was working in the archery department, and this guy he just couldn't. Bow wouldn't group or nothing, so he figured it was the rest. So he wanted to drop away on it. And I don't know if when you set up a drop away, you have to shoot them to see if they're going to work. We can't just say, okay, it's going to work, not going to work. So you shoot it. And there's a couple guys in the range, and I draw back. I shoot this one. I draw back again. I aim at the other arrow, and I stick the two of them together. These guys, oh, did somebody do that? Yeah, well, this is the second one I've done when I worked at Cabela's. And about the sixth or seventh one I've done. And when the guy come in, it's like, it's shooting just fine.
Right.
And I was like, I could never get it to shoot. I didn't say it, but I wanted to say, well, it ain't the bow, it's you, dude. Now,
Yeah.
let's fix your form because you're wrong and why you're doing it.
Yeah, I never got to that. I could adjust my cams and draw length and make D loops and stuff, but when it come down to, like you're talking about, setting up a rest, I would always go down to the local bow shop, get it put on there, let him watch me shoot it, and make sure everything was right on it from that standpoint.
Well, the easiest way and best way to set up a rest is you take your sight off. There's a laser that you put on there, and you shine it back. You put your arrow on there, you have it all knocked, and you're going to shine it back on the string, just so it's not right on your string. Then you're going to point it out to the tip of the arrow, and you're going to adjust that rest until that laser pointer is touching the tip of the arrow. Now you're perfectly center shot.
Right.
Can't get any closer to that. There's no reason to do any adjustment because that is perfect. Then you have your arrow for height. You want your arrow to go not directly through the burger button hole, which is the hole your rest mounts to, for those that don't know what that is. You want it to be, slightly up a little bit. And then you want to level your bow. So your bow is level. And then you put a level on your arrow and you adjust your knock point until that's level. So now your bow is plumb and your arrow is level. That's a right angle to the arrow, makes a right angle to the string. Now you can kind of roughly look at it by putting a square up there and looking at it. Or if you don't have one, a piece of paper, they're square edges, are close enough. So stick them up there, line them up, it's square, you're good. No reason to paper tune them, because anything that's not shooting perfect holes after that is most likely you.
Makes sense.
Because when I put on a loop, the way I put them on, you don't untie them. If they're tied on correctly,
you got
the little tech tip here, before you tie your loop on, wax it. The knots will get tighter, and you don't. Somebody will say you got to have a knock point on there. No, I've done some testing, and most your older bows for sure. Some of the new ones may not, because there's such a sharp angle. Who knows? But I put the loop above and below the knock, and I have no space in there, so it's just tight against there, pulling back tight, and way to go. And you don't want a real long loop.
That's a good tip.
I cut my loops about 4.5 inches long. I have one end burnt, measured out, cut 4.5 inches, burn the other end, wax it, tie the loop. Now on them, I can't really show it here, but I kind of describe it. When you tie them, you're going to have the part that loops over on one side, it'll be on the other side. So they have to be on opposite sides. And the reason for that is that they're both on the same side. They're going to twist your string. So you're pulling on one side of the string, where if you're on each side, now then you're pulling back straight. And
Gotcha.
A couple little tips for anybody listening that's trying to set one up. And if you have any questions or anything, the Archery Talk 101 Facebook group is a good place to go for information like that. You can post questions, and somebody get back. I've been a archery instructor since '95. I've been a bow tech. I went down to PSE, spent a week down there in 2001, and been working on bows ever since. A little before that, but I didn't really know what I was doing.
Gotcha. Bro, I got a good question for you. What is your take on practicing with your bow? A lot of guys, after hunting seasons in there, they leave them put them back in the case, they wax it real good, and they don't get it out till, a couple weeks before the season comes in and start shooting. Are you a big advocate of shooting annually, weekly, monthly? How often do you shoot? What do you feel is necessary to stay, I guess, in tune?
Well, you need to do as much shooting as you can, to a point. You know, I know there's a lot of people, like you said, that after hunting season's over, they'll put it away. A week before, they're going to pull it out and start shooting it. The problem with that is if there's something wrong, you have a week to get it fixed before season
true.
starts.
Yeah.
You know, having a shop, I've had people come in and says, "Is it normal for your bow to string to break, you know, over the summertime?" And I says, "No, if it's a bad string, it can. I've had one do it because I need to replace it. I just make a new string. I didn't make one. I was like, I think time. The other thing's going on. And next I open it up and string it broke. Well, it was many years old. Well, this one guy come in. I said, well, no, not normal. Let's see. So we opened up his case. And of course, yeah, the string was broke because it got cut. His broadheads are in the lid of the case, not covered.
Oh, okay.
And all it takes is a broadhead to touch your string because it's under a lot of pressure and it snaps. I'm like,
That's right.
well, yeah, it's normal when you put broadheads in there. Now, in my hunting setup, I have my broadheads in my case, but they're in the quiver. So the broadheads are actually covered. You know, I don't have open broadheads in there. You know, they're always inside of a quiver or something. You know,
Yeah,
so they're
mine's
all protected.
I keep the broadheads in the quiver, and then the rest of them are in a tackle box in the workbench.
Yeah, but yeah, I've talked to people that go out and every day they'll shoot 6 arrows.
Mhm.
Just go out, shoot 6 arrows. And I know other people go out and they'll shoot 100 arrows.
Yeah.
It all depends on what you want to do. And, you know, if you think it's a chore, then yeah, you're not going to want to do it. Now, for
Right.
those that do put it up, like for the summertime, I would get out at least a month before and start shooting it. You know, because you're going to build
Absolutely.
those muscles. Because you know what happened to me one time was, you know, I'm doing all the shooting over the summertime. Come hunting season, you know, now it's hunting season, so I'm set up for hunting. That time I had one bow, so I'm going to set it up for hunting, and I quit practicing. Well, one morning it was cold. I climbed up in the tree stand. I always like to draw my bow, you know, before anything goes on, just just to kind of make sure
Do the
everything's all right.
same thing. Yep.
I could not pull the bow back. Now I shoot 70 pounds all the time, but I hadn't been shooting. So I'm trying to pull, I'm stringing, I'm straining, I'm pulling as hard as I can. I can't get it back for nothing. I was like, and I hurt myself kind of doing it. So I sat there and waited. I was like, either I go home or just sit here and wait. So I sat there for a while and kind of warmed up because you're still stiff and everything in the morning. And then I was
Right.
able to get back. But you know, I hurt for a week after that.
You
It's all
still
because
did you still shoot a 70-pound draw?
yeah, I still shoot 70. I've got my one as I'm working on it, got it turned down to 60. But you know, my form for me shooting 70 pounds, I lock into my form easier with a little bit
Mhm.
lighter weight because it's, you know, I got the lead off. So I'm pulling back a bit lighter. I'm not as solid in my form because the little extra weight, I have to pull a little harder, which helps me lock the back muscles in because I'm straining a little bit harder. And that's that just seemed to work better for me.
Sure.
Right now, I got them cranked down to 60 while I'm working on them because I don't want to worry about the weight, but then I'll get them cranked up to 70, you know, for hunting season. And, you know, I know it's I've shot some 300 rounds at 70 pounds, and it seems like the last end's always the better. They get better as I go along. You know, I'm struggling more. I'm forcing in there a little harder and a little tighter and to, you know, keep everything going.
Yeah. Yeah. I start the first one I had compound anyways was 60, and then I went to I think the one I currently have is right at 73. But I don't know the reason I asked. I've always been told by a lot of guys who bow hunt that is way overkill for deer hunting. And you don't need all that, but I enjoy shooting it. That's what I prefer
Yeah,
as well.
I know. Well, you don't need it. Uh, but you know, those little bit harder shots, you know, that come in, you're like you actually hit on the shoulder blade. You know, that extra weight is going to punch through easier.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, if you make you know, you hit a bone, you know, especially the muzzies, you know, they're saying is bad to the bone. But yeah, I could show you some bones that it's shattered.
I
Yeah,
believe
you
it.
know, yeah, or my one bow I had before I knew what needed to do, I had too long of a draw length. I was way overdrawn and a big heavy coat that I heard the arrow hit the string hit my sleeve. And of course, I didn't make a good shot. I don't know where I hit it, but I seen the deer walk a little away and then just kind of lay down and,
Sure.
eventually died. And I know I didn't run off because I shattered the thigh bone in the leg. It just hit it just complete. You could see the point from that tip on that muzzy. You
Uh-huh.
could see the end of it and it just shattered it, in like 3 pieces and a couple of little fragments. And I've done that many times. I've hit other bones and just, it just blows right through them.
Yeah, so sometimes it does, and then sometimes it stops at like a 3-foot thick concrete wall, and you're wondering what the heck happened.
There's one spot on the shoulder
Mm-hmm.
that
That
if you
plate
hit it,
area.
it's not going to go through. And sometimes if you hit them in the spine, it doesn't go through. That's a pretty tough part there too.
Yeah.
If you don't bust through that spine, and
Mm-hmm.
even 70 pounds at a close range is still, you can still not get through. It didn't penetrate. So there's a couple spots on them that, even a good muzzy tough broadhead isn't going to go through. But
Sure.
I know my first bow was back when we were shooting aluminums. I was shooting 25 or 21 17s, full length arrows. So they're normally 32 to 34 inches, the arrows back when there's that aluminum.
Yeah.
And I had 125 grain tip on it, shooting 52 pounds. And I was 20 feet up in the tree and the trail that I had to get over some bushes. So I was 40 yards away. And I shot my first buck. And when that deer turned around, that arrow was sticking almost all the way out that deer. I think it stopped at the fletching, almost a pass through at 52 pounds.
Okay.
On a 40-yard shot. And you don't need a lot of weight. Now, if I'd have had a little bit more, 60, it probably went through.
Mm-hmm.
But that's pretty much all I could shoot. That was, enough of the struggle. That was all the way down. And then, I'm shooting and I want to get up a little bit higher. So I'm shooting and I finally get up to, 55 and 56. And, it was tough to get above 60. I was shooting and finally I got up to like 62 and then it just went up to 70 with no problem after that. But
Yeah.
it was a work just to get up to 60 pounds. So you don't have to shoot a lot of weight. I know, some kids, some teenagers that are shooting 35, 40 pounds and they're killing deer, no problem. With the 35, 40 pound bows. You get a lot of the ladies, they're only, some of the ladies, shooting 40, 45 pounds.
Yep. And they're knocking them down.
Oh yeah. And they're killing them just fine.
Yeah.
I do know, I did meet a couple that are shooting 60, 70 pounds, but that's not many of them.
Right.
And most of them aren't shooting a lot of weight. It's like you said, you don't need to. You don't need to shoot those 80, 90, 100 pound bows. Without the proper form, it's just going to tear your shoulders out.
Yeah, I guess until it starts physically bothering me, I'm gonna keep shooting the 70-pound bow.
Well, and one of the things that you do is as you go in, if you straighten that arm out, the shoulder raises up. And that causes problems in the shoulder. So if you keep that down, keep a little bent arm and pushing the holding hand forward as you're shooting, you're not going to have problems with it. And then if you fall back and you're using your back muscles to do the drawing, I've had my right elbow, because that's when I draw with, so sore I could hardly pick anything up with it, but I could draw my bow.
Yeah, the only thing that's got fatigued on me or been sore from shooting was that left shoulder, the one that pushes the bow out.
Right. And take a look when you're shooting, you probably have that shoulder raised up a little bit. That's kind of the problem with that. Drop it down. And when you're shooting, that's one thing you do in the Arch Talk 101 Facebook group, upload a video of your shooting and we'll take a look at it.
Okay.
And give you some pointers. That's one of the advantages of that Facebook group is, you don't have to worry about everybody sold selling anything because you don't sell in it. There's none in it. If I see it, I delete it. The only links you're going to see is to archery events. If you want to, want to know what archery events coming up, or you have one come up, post a link to it and help you out that way. And if you want to upload a video, we'll critique it and give you some pointers. That pretty much anybody can get a good critique. I've even had someone looked at some that are, professional Olympic archers. It's like, hey, something's not feeling. What is it? And you're looking and you're looking. It's like, oh, try this little bitty tweak, and then you got the beginner that there's all kinds of things to fix.
Sure.
And whatever question you want to ask, the only stupid question I say is the one you haven't asked.
Exactly. I agree with that 100%, Roy.
Now, if you ask the same question 100 times, we're going to pretty much tell you it hasn't changed. And nobody really asks it that many times, but ask a question, and we answer that one. Ask a different question. You can ask questions all you want, and and then if you want some extra help, we can get together and help you out that way.
Sure.
I can do online coaching and help people out that way, and that's a really advantageous of the way things work. We got a Zoom here, and it'd be real easy for you to shoot and me watch you shooting, and we can critique it, and then of course we video it, like doing here, record it, and they can play it back. And that's one nice thing about now is because we can record things and play them back and stop them with slow motion and all kinds of things now, and we can look at different things going on. When I first learned this back in '95, your option was VCR recording. That was it. And that stopping those and recording those, the quality of the picture was not near as good.
We've come a long way since then. Yeah.
These phones have more features and better quality cameras than some of the professional digital cameras.
It is, yeah. You're absolutely right. It amazes, like a friend of mine recently, we're doing some filming out on the water, and he's got the new iPhone. It is amazing, the clarity and the definition that thing can capture.
Well, and my two here on the computer, I have a Logitech camera that I have, so I get some pretty good pictures rather than using the laptop one. It's not very good. So if I'm recording at the computer, I'm using that one. Otherwise,
Sure.
Everything I'm recording is on the phone. All the YouTube videos I put out are all recorded on the phone. If I do any recording, it's on the phone because it's just so many features. And I was talking to a lady, it's a professional photographer, and she was saying that, the cell phones take a much better picture than her digital camera, but it doesn't look good for a professional photographer going around with a cell phone taking pictures. They got to have the big digital cameras and.
Yep. I just realized I did not bring my phone charger out here to the shop.
Oh.
And I just got that little bleep come on my phone.
Oh yeah, so we better kind of wrap this up before you kind of drop off on us.
We've got 15% left, so we've
okay.
We've probably got another at least 10, 15 minutes. I just wanted to give you a heads up.
Oh,
my apologies for not being prepared.
Yeah. So I know you have the fishing charter business. How would somebody get a hold of you if they're interested in doing something like that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So probably the easiest way, most direct, would be just to give me a call on my personal line. It's 336-988-1394. My website, you can go to Real Country, that's REEL, realcountrygs.com, and that'll show you like the services that we offer, where we fish, what bodies of water, what landings we take out from. And then I also participate in social media. You've got Facebook, I'm on TikTok as well, and Instagram. So any of those platforms would be good.
Yeah,
you should come down, Roy, and fish with me. Get on some of these big blue cats.
Yeah, that sounds like fun. I've got the rod and reels for them.
It is a lot of
pretty
fun.
heavy one. Yeah,
Yeah, well,
we'll have to do that.
that's the great thing about going out with a guide. I'll provide all the safety equipment, all the rod and reels. I catch fresh bait. I get up 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, go to the river, catch bait, get prepared for the day. It takes all the work out of it for you as a customer. All you have to do is sit back and catch fish. It's a
Yeah,
good time.
I'll also have to do is sit back and catch fish.
Yeah.
I think it'd be fun going out and catching the bait fish first.
Yeah, some people, I have people request that they want to learn how to do that. We do that as well.
Yeah, gives you a longer time to fish.
Yeah, it's
Eh,
catching bait. I enjoy throwing a cast net and catching them, but some of those mornings where you got to get up early, it's definitely work.
Yeah,
But still, man, anything I could do to pursue my passion in the outdoors and get to call it a job. That's, to me, living the dream, brother. It's truly amazing. I've been very blessed these last few years, but it's been a good opportunity for me.
yeah, it sounds like. And have you ever gone out bow fishing or take anybody out to bow fish?
I have not gotten into that, Roy. I have never went. I've never went bow fishing. I've got a guy, a friend of mine in the fishing community. He's been trying to get me to go, and I need to take the time to do it because here's the problem with getting it, becoming a guide and getting and networking with people from different aspects of the outdoors. They're always like, let's go duck hunting, let's go bow fishing, let's go do this. I know I don't need to pick up another addiction, like,
Yeah,
because I don't have the time. I really don't.
yeah,
But
it's
I
you
need
kind
to.
of have to
I'm going
pick
to
your
start.
passions.
Yeah, but I'm gonna start making the time just to at least to test the waters. But I know it's gonna happen. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
you're
I'm gonna want to jump in full blown, just like I do everything else, and get good at it.
yeah, sometimes we have to kind of stop one thing to do something different, and that's just kind of way it goes.
Yep.
Well, I'll look at a description for the podcast as well as on the YouTube channel. I'll post this up there. I'll put
Cool.
links to how to get a hold of you in there, and we'll get somebody coming out there. And it's been real great talking with you today. And
Absolutely.
I know we're
Yeah.
kind of
Thank you for the
pushing the
opportunity,
time.
Roy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I always enjoy talking to people. We got into other things. We started off with fishing and get into archery, and yeah, we're
Yeah.
just definitely um, you know, talking outdoors is there, because like I hunt, not just with the bow, but with a gun and shotgun, and I haven't done shotgun a while because I'm getting older. My knees don't like me walking fields for pheasants, so I'd rather go sit for deer. But and fishing and catfishing is what I normally like to fish for, and
Sure.
not the blues because I don't go to the river too often. I don't go to the lakes, but hey, it's all fun, and
It's just getting in the outdoors, experiencing it, man. That's what it's all
yeah,
about,
nice
for
to be
sure.
outside.
Indeed, indeed it is. But hey, thank you for reaching out to me, Roy. I appreciate the opportunity. I really enjoyed your time tonight and having me on the show. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's been great talking with you. My name is Roy Canterbury, and host today on Archer Talk 101.